The Silent Guardian, written and read by Christopher Halton. Parminter was, by any reasonable definition, an odd fellow. No one knew whether it was his true name, for there existed no deed or document to attest to it. He lived a solitary life on the very edge of the village, with little company save that of nature itself. No one could say when he first arrived, nor indeed from whence he came, to inhabit a small timber-framed cottage with a forlorn thatched roof which, by all accounts, had become something of a nursery for wild flora, rooted deep in the rotting reed thatch. The faded wall plaster had begun to break away, exposing in cracked and crumbling patches the ancient wattle and door beneath, grey with age and thick with dust. Like its occupant, an elderly man bent with years, the cottage had seen far better days, yet he appeared entirely content with his modest plot by the wayside, tending a small garden from which he grew all his vegetables. Deer and foxes were often known to call at his door, where he would cheerfully dispense food to them, and no one could think ill of him for it. At times he would not be seen for days together, yet whenever concern for his welfare grew greatest, he would invariably find his way home. Further mystery clung to his past in the fact that he was deaf and dumb, and though he smiled readily and waved to passers-by, not a single word ever passed his lips. His dwelling was devoid of modern conveniences such as running water, and he was frequently observed drawing water from the well with the bucket, which served him alike for drinking and washing. On occasion, the more curious villagers would call at his door in the hope of prying a glimpse of his bijou home, but each time he would emerge from the side of the cottage, grunt incoherently and smile, thus discouraging further inquiry. His fuel in winter was gathered from the nearby forest, and as far as anyone knew, he lived upon a strict vegetarian diet, even foraging in the woods for mushrooms to supplement his meagre fare. To many in the hamlet of Floweton, he was regarded as something of a lucky charm, for during his lifetime the village seemed to prosper, whilst others nearby did not. One day a dark and ominous figure rode into the village on horseback to take lodging at the inn. Clothed entirely in black, he was well dressed and evidently a gentleman of quality. He arranged with the ostler for the stabling of his horse, a fine handsome black gelding, whose saddle was of the very best leather, and according to the ostler, beautifully cut and expertly stitched. Having paid a gold sovereign for the finest room and a shilling for the welfare of the horse, he slung his leather saddlebags over his shoulder and retired to his chamber. The innkeeper surmised that the gentleman was likely a lord of some standing. He gave his name as Henry Diath, yet would not disclose from whence he had ridden, nor to what destination he was bound. Whoever he was, he remained indefinitely, always settling his accounts promptly and without dispute. He seldom left his room, preferring to have his meals and a flagon of beer brought to him by the servants. In many respects he was the perfect guest, yet among the villagers a quiet unease grew. None who encountered him could describe his face beyond remarking that he was dark and handsome, and none could recall any meaningful conversation with him during the rare evenings when he strode out alone for a few hours, invariably returning at midnight. Within a few months the villagers found themselves unaccountably wealthy, though no one could say how this change of fortune had come about, and no one thought to question it. The money was theirs to keep and spend, and they ignored the troubling questions that might otherwise have arisen, living lives of careless indulgence. As for old Parminter, he appeared not to notice the village's transformation, continuing in his simple poverty, while an unmistakable darkness gathered about the place. People grew more aggressive and increasingly aloof from one another, as they acquired the finery life had to offer. All seemed to believe themselves suddenly above their station. It was not long before arguments and quarrels turned to outright fighting, and as Death spent ever more time among them, their greed and avarice continued unabated. He walked silently through their midst, untouched and unaffected, while the village around him slowly unravelled and descended into chaos. Families turned upon one another, friends became enemies, and then a darker phase took hold, as murder rooted itself in the village. Men stabbed, shot, strangled and burned, until there was none left alive but old Parminter and his solitary home. When all lay in ruin and bodies littered the village, Death quietly saddled his horse and secured a bulging saddlebag upon its flank. With quiet satisfaction, he mounted his steed and rode towards Parminter's cottage. After some minutes he dismounted, tethered the horse to a tree, and approached the old man's door. Parminter was at home, and for the first time in living memory he spoke. "I gather you wish to speak with me." With a courteous sweep of his arm he gestured towards the interior of the cottage and smiled. "Please come in." Death strode inside, his spurs clinking upon the stone floor as he removed his leather gauntlets and glanced about the humble interior with thinly veiled disdain. "And you exist," he said, "in a house fit only for dogs?" Parminter smiled but said nothing further, closing the decrepit door behind them. "Tell me," Death continued, "I offered you riches beyond imagining, yet unlike those greedy fools in the village, you refused them, though your needs were far greater than theirs." "Because I have no need of wealth," Parminter replied calmly. "All the riches I desire lie about me already. Yet you, Lucifer, are too arrogant to see them, for your sight is blinded by the darkness that surrounds you. I have lived among men and seen both their strengths and their weaknesses. Unlike the contracts you sold them for their souls, I believe they are redeemable and worthy of good. You see only weakness, and where you find it, you corrupt." "How do you know my name?" Death demanded. "You are the first and only human who ever has. I despise humanity, my father's creation, nurtured and loved, while I, his true son, was cast from the kingdom of heaven." Parminter laughed softly. "I am no man. I have walked this world since the dawn of mankind. Through me, as a beacon of truth and justice, humanity has endured and grown. I have waited in this village for 200 years, preparing for your coming." Then Death understood that he had been deceived. Reaching for the knife at his belt, he snarled, "Whoever you are, you shall speak no more against me." At that moment a blinding light filled the cottage, and Death recoiled in horror. As the radiance subsided, the Archangel Gabriel stood revealed, clad in full armour, a golden sword drawn. "I am here once more, Lucifer," Gabriel declared, "to compel you to return the souls you sought to steal. Within this sanctified place you are bound as a bird within a cage until you relinquish your claims." Lucifer faltered, for beyond the cottage he sensed the gathering of the heavenly hosts and knew himself defeated. In that instant the village was restored, and the contracts for its souls crumbled into ash upon the floor. With a final cry of rage, Lucifer vanished. For several days thereafter, Parminter was not seen. When at last the villagers ventured to his cottage, they found the old man lying peacefully upon the floor of his humble dwelling. Out of respect for the gentle, deaf and silent soul they had known, they buried him in the churchyard beneath a simple stone cross, where he lies to this day. And so here ends this story, as a warning and as a reminder that although evil may walk and prevail openly among men, it will never thrive unopposed. The end.